Hi, everybody.
Um, Today we're going to start looking into different areas, like to carve out some of the plans for the future. And as my name facing me, so I don't forget. And what I did in the agenda was included the material that's also attached under each of the areas. And I thought it would be very helpful for us to use that with kind of a rudder. There are some things that were in the last plan that probably would hold over to the next plan, so I thought it would be useful to have it in front of us as we go for each of the areas for residential. Any questions about that? Mike, you can talk a little bit about the population.
Yeah, sure. We got some additional information. I remember last time, and everybody wants to start bringing a binder for all these different things, but there's one man right there. Some of these handouts are going to be helpful as we go through the process here. I do think that we'll probably visit some of it urgently, immediately, and then come back to it as we get to different topics. So it might just be a good idea. But last time we met, thank you all for being here, by the way. Last time we met, we went through what was compiled through the census data. And while it was good data, I don't know that it was a complete story. And this organization, I don't know if it's ESRI or ESRI, it's like Verbo or something. There's a lot more information, a lot more detailed information in here that I thought would be helpful. Specifically, as it relates to today, we're talking about residential living and potentially the types of residential living that we would like to pass a vision on. Just today, Sue had sent me design that a contractor wants to at least have us consider that has to do with townhomes. Well, right now we've got a number of projects that are coming in that have to do with townhomes or apartments. We have some that have single family houses. And the question comes up all the time, how much is too much? Or why are we building apartments? Or what, blah, blah, blah. And I think this starts to help inform us a little bit as to what, for the lack of a better term, what types of residential living we currently have. So if we take a look at this, it talks about total population that was in the census data and how many units we have, which is good for parcels and the way that we use our assessments and taxes in the town. Then we've got owner-occupied housing units by mortgage status. That I didn't think meant a tremendous amount to me. Yeah, the percentage of household income. There was one thing that was on here that I thought was very meaningful to me personally. This is probably two parts. On page 4, you'll see that it says housing units by units in structure. So one thing to note is that by code, actually, Stu, you should know this, but how many units do we allow by code in the town of Ogden? 6, right? Or is it 8?
I don't know.
We gave you 8.
Yeah, I think we got it.
So maybe it is 8. Remember that? So what's interesting is that you can see just how many between 2016 and 2020, how many housing units we have by units in structure, and then how many are above that. Which, if you look at all the way the right side, it's got a reliability rating. So they're basically saying that there's a chance that they don't have all the correct information on here outside agency that you might study. So it might just make sense for us to take a second and look through this before, and there's also a lot of information on vacant houses. Luckily, we're not too bad on that point. But there was one other thing that I saw, and I can't find it.
I think part of it, we were trying to say, are we trying to create more denser units for residential purposes, or are we looking more for interpreting the single family?
Yeah.
Subdivision?
Thank you. I think that it's easy for me to say I'd rather have single-family homes built in the town of Oxford. I mean, that is my personal opinion and desire, but at the same time, I'm, elected to be the supervisor of everybody in the town. So my opinion, while it matters, it doesn't mean that makes for solid governance to just do everything that comes to the top of my mind. I'd rather use data to prove that that's the right thing or not. I think that a healthy balance is always going to be the right answer, but what is that number? What is the metric for that? And I think that's where I'm seeking some counsel from this body, from this steering committee, to help us understand that, or to at least empower us to go out and get that information. And so,
So Mike, how do you like that, what you're talking about, how you define it to what we're focusing on today?
I'd love to know what everybody's thoughts are, but at the end of the day, we're going through all of residential living, which is going to touch on this area.
Yeah, further down on the other side,
Yeah.
we'll get to kind of more specific things, but that could be a question to think about them.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to talk about or point out?
How about the renter, the number of renter units? I know in the town of Sweden, our school district is now the worst performing right under the city of Rochester, and we have a lot of subsidized housing, a lot of rentals, and it's really changed the whole look of Rockport and the school district.
Yeah, the district itself has what they call it the school report card. Every school gets a report card, not like you get, you did that in English. It's like a rating in Rockport. I would be very surprised if this year it didn't finally cross the 50% threshold on what they call economically disadvantaged.
Yep.
Spencerport was always in the 20s, like the low 20s, I believe. And so Rockford has certainly made quite the shift there. Now, I want to be careful, although I tend to understand that one thing follows the other. You can assume that that's because of lower income housing or something like that. But I just don't know that that's, quantitative. I don't know
I
that.
only know from my daughter, she's kindergarten, she's been in that school district for 20-some years, and that's what she tells me, she sees her students. They got their clothes and bags, they tell her, and they smell, she has to provide clothes for them, so the other kids don't make fun of them, because they smell like cigarettes, and she
So
does
you're,
that every day.
you're raising a cautionary note about
Thank you,
rental property.
yes.
And once again, that will come up as we get a little further down. That's one of the specific items that we want to address as a 10-year plan.
Okay.
Should we go on into the vision statement? And we'll start with the broadest, and we'll go down to some very specific things that we can make implementation items. But the last vision statement was under 3. It will be a place to grow up, live, raise a family, and enjoy retirement. It will be a place known for its attractive and safe residential living areas, diverse economic opportunity, quality community resources, diverse leisure and cultural assets, scenic natural resources, regional collaborative efforts, vital farmland and agricultural heritage, and appealing design and development practices. The town will try to improve local while making integrate in a way that keeps its rural character and long-term fun. The town also recognizes the ability to social and cultural center of the town with enhances of the world view and quality of life for its residents. So I guess when I read this, my question was, is there anything people want to change in this? I mean, it's pretty comprehensive. Is there anything we would like to have said differently or added or subtracted in this particular vision statement.
I personally don't want to make any changes, Brian. As I said before, I'm glad it's good to me. I love it the way it is. I don't want it to grow. But it's gonna grow, I know that it is.
But this statement
Yeah.
captures your sense of what the vision is for the community. Of course, all of these can be interpreted differently as you go along, but you feel like this covers it.
In my mind, it does, but there's people here a lot younger, still working, younger kids, so maybe they got a totally different feeling.
I feel the same way as you. In growth, I wouldn't fix it. I want to see what other towns have. It seems like they're a good town here. Good town to live in.
Yeah, I don't want to insult anybody, but I don't want to be another Gates, and I don't want to be Rockport. I wouldn't mind being Churchville or Hilton. So anybody make the note of that.
I'm recording all.
What I would politely say, maybe this is a good exercise, let poke holes in, just for the sake of doing it. So the first sentence is the policy of the town to locate future residential development in areas where existing infrastructure is.
We're still up at vision.
Oh,
On the agenda.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
I will hold that thought.
If
Thank
I
you.
was to, I like everything. Very organized. I think the vital farmland and agricultural heritage should be up for the top. You don't want to lose that. That's something I think should be higher. Along with the natural resources. Should be, unowned. Or adult.
What are other people?
I actually like what the vision says. I think it's a great statement, entire thing to keep us aligned with our goals with this plan. I think that after the bullet items on the bottom, I think it's really critical to leave that statement in regard to the town will strive to achieve this vision on future growth in a way that maintains its rural character and small town charm. I think that's important that that is in there, that stays in there. I would not want to take that out.
So would you also agree that, the vital farm and agricultural heritage should be moved up a ladder, so to speak?
To be honest, I felt that the first bullet is there, attractive and safe residential living areas, or areas. And then, but if we're to move the vital farmland and agricultural heritage, I put that second. It's just my opinion. It's not what's right or wrong, it's just my opinion.
What do other people think about the whole statement or anything that you would rearrange and change in the bullets?
Statement's fine. Says it all.
It's a good statement, it's a strong statement. Whenever I read it, I thought, what else can you possibly add, or why would you want to subtract it?
I think that the entire statement fully aligns with the plan, with each component of the plan.
This is a really good statement.
And I don't know necessarily if any of these bullets were ranked in the matter of importance or not. I mean, I would.
Yeah, just I think that's how they were given. You asked, I was asked for something, and it was written down that way, so it was talking.
But it is, to your point, I mean, one of the assets that we have in this town, we do have one of those agricultural farm.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is probably the case of if other people are looking at it, whether it's, they will feel that these are prioritized. And even though clearly they aren't, even whenever I read it, I saw vital farmland and agricultural heritage down towards the bottom, I was kind of, because we talked a lot about being able to maintain that as a, right at the top kind of priority, so.
To me, when I read this the first time, those bullets did not come across to me as in order by preference or priority.
Okay.
But since that point's brought up, I don't know, then I look at it and I think, well, attractive and safe residential living areas. I like that one's first,
Mhm.
just my opinion.
What do people think about moving, vital farmland up below attractive safe residential?
Of course, I vote for that.
And that's why I represent agriculture.
I agree with that. I didn't look at it as they were ranked, but you pointed out that way.
People will rank, right? People will rank.
What do they mean when they put down diverse economic opportunities? Are you trying to promote more businesses to, like we have over on Shepherd Road, where we have all those warehouses, still out there? Just wondered what
That's a
kind
good
of,
question. Can we define that up front, or do
I
we
just look at
define
it
that?
as those, if it's zoning, like I would have loved to have got the chip and the A and D, or the Micron chip companies.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. And it's, welcome for anybody that fits the zone.
I was hoping they could stay towards gates a little bit closer.
That's why it's over there.
Well, and that raises a good point. If we're talking about this, we're talking about, when we get to policy later, when we get to directing the narrative, the board has the assigned power to delegate where we want certain types of development. And currently, Shepherd Road is one of those only places that we have what we call industrial or light industrial, where that is appropriate. Other places not. So when we say diverse economic opportunities, we recognize, and we should recognize that kind of is specifically addressing zoning. Where we are very specifically allowing, farming and not changing it to a commercially developed property, where we're identifying residential, single family, multi, and then looking at commercial or light industrial. So we do have the opportunity as a board to specifically protect areas of the town for this purpose.
Actually, under, policy objective, we can remember what we're talking about here, because there we're starting to get into, the first level of specifics, which we may want to shape things to suggest, that things will be located in certain areas, or how diverse. Right. Anything else anybody would want to change in the statement other than moving that one item up?
I don't think so, because I think it's everything we're striving to try to do, whether it actually happens or not. I mean, if you look back 10 years ago, were all of these things accomplished or not?
Right. Absolutely.
Probably not. But I mean, it's something that you're always trying to, that's your goal. In 10 years, do we hope to have these things? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a really good statement about how we want this community to be, and defining the specific. So, Mike, was this going to be goods taken on this? Because I'm not thinking.
Yeah, I've written down this one part, and Christian is not here, is the note taker. We're also still recording.
Okay. So let's go on to the policy, which is the next level, moving towards specificity. Okay, it is the policy of the town to manage development in a way that preserves the town's character and rural feel for generations to come. The abundant open space farmland in the town of Ogden, which is an important part of the community's fabric, will be preserved over time. New residential, commercial, and industrial investment will be consistent with the town's character by ensuring appropriate location, style, scale, and development. The rural appeal of the town will get consideration in project review decisions, ensuring high quality design in all future development. That kind of touches on that whole issue of where and what. What do people think about this is another really strong statement. What do people think about this policy statement? Or would you prefer it? Is there something that's missing? Is there something in here that you feel is good that needs to be worded differently, given that this is a different time? Thoughts about this?
Well, the environmental assessment forms, sort of backs what they strive for too, and that one of the points in both the short and long are, is it consistent with the town's character and growth? So the statement sort of coincides with what the state has, the umbrella statement.
I'd like to ask a question and Archie, if you wouldn't mind hopping in with your perspective on this. I do think that this statement provides the opportunity for the board to come up with, I'm quoting it from here, new residential, commercial, and industrial investment will be consistent with the town's character by ensuring appropriate location, style, and scale of development. It's not saying you can't do it. It's saying that you have the opportunity to designate what's appropriate. But this sentence, the abundant open space and farmland in the town of Ogden, which is an important part of the community's fabric, will be preserved over time. What has struck me as interesting over the last couple of years, not being the supervisor and understanding some of the development on farmland that's going on, is there seems to be a bit of a shift. There seems to be certain farmlands where there are family farms that potentially aren't looking or aren't interested in continuing. And so they're starting to sell it off. And that's part of the reason why we got Amazon and across the street from Amazon. It's part of the reason why we've got some various solar fields. You know, that was all farmland at one point that somebody sold. And that's your private property.
Right.
And you do have the right to sell that off. So maybe give us a little bit of perspective on that. And what
Well, I only know that the Shepherd Road thing, Roger Stedman had that, so he sold that off, and then of course he has sold his or somehow transferred it ownership to Henry Meyer and those guys. So they're still going full steam ahead. Kobe's are still going full steam ahead because they're building that new barn that Sarah's committed to taking over. And so in Lebex, they have their son over there in Broom Road. Of course, the Steins lost their boy, so Raymond is over in Churchville there. So I don't know what, I don't think they've sold that farmland yet on Broom Road. So is the, I was thinking of Churchville because right before you make it.
Kids went to church.
Yeah,
they got more.
so, yeah, so I don't know, the only person I can think of is Rodney when he sold that Shepherd Road, but is there anybody else in particular that you're thinking of?
Not really. I know that the Colbys had tried for a portion of their property to have solar.
Right,
And
but a
so-
lot of people that have done that have kept the, I don't know what kind of deal, but they're getting paid for it, yeah. But supposedly that was all land that was marginal,
Unfarmable.
yes.
Yeah.
That's what-
These parcels, these lands, farms were to be kept agricultural, the owner could still sell it to another farmer.
And the only reason that they have the ability to build solar farms is the board actually has to give an overlay district on top of that. So it requires a board action. And so the reason I'm asking the question is that if this is informing our decision to say, no, you can't do that, then on one hand, we are not preserving the farmland over time, but we're also going against the wishes of the landowner of the farm.
Right.
So that's the conundrum that the board is in. when it
Well, and
comes
one of
to
the things too, when we were going over solar arrays, solar districts, New York State put very clearly, like, farmland was ranked on a scale, I think, of 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, something like that, 4 being rocky, like unfarmable land, and that was the only land that would qualify to have a solar array put on the property. So you can't have grade A prime farmland and turn it into a solar array. That would not happen. The other thing too would have to be its proximity to the grid. So based on where the farm was, if you wanted to put a solar array there, it had to be within a certain distance of the electric grid in order for it to be considered, farmland. So I know one of the issues that the zoning board had come in, contact with was, looking at the development, looking at, does it meet that criteria? We would have the developer, the solar developer come in, they'd have to do seeker, whether it was a negative declaration on something, whether, and more often than not, they were coming to us because they needed a variance, permission to, go above what the criteria was. But it was interesting too, because we did have a couple public hearings where the neighbors, especially on Whittier, we asked them, we said, solar farm, no one really wants it, but at the same time, it doesn't make any noise. It does, there's certain advantages to it. And we asked them point blank, well, would you rather the farmer then sell the land to a commercial or to a developer who, when you look out your backyard, instead of seeing, 12-foot tall pine trees and a berm, are you going to see streetlights and dogs barking and kids, riding their bikes around and, second story houses? What would you rather see, that or that? And some of the comments were, we want to see neighborhood, we want to see, it's like, really? Okay, well, so, that was kind of an interesting thing for us to hear, was like, you'd rather see, a housing development in your backyard than that, but it's an interesting, it was certainly an interesting conversation, and I understand too that, with the solar arrays, there's a 25, 30-year decommissioning, thing. So they are putting money in, that the sole purpose of the money that they put in every year is when they're done, that property is basically put back to, supposed to be back to like where they were never there before,
It'll be interesting.
which we'll wait and see,
Because the recycling of those panels, they haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Michael, I wanted to come back to since you raised this question. Are you suggesting, I can't find the statement. Community fabric will be preserved over time. That whole area, was there something particularly concerned there, or?
I don't think so, but it all comes down to this term that actually some towns don't like, even though it's in the state charter, and that would be the term character. And it's when everything, in zoning is, it's in line with the town's character.
You go back to Shepherd Road, where that Amazon building is now was agricultural. He sold it to a commercial developer, and now there's an Amazon building and the buffer agricultural in between that and the residential of Gillette Road is now owned by Myers. That's just one more parcel that has commercial potential. Now that's leading into your residential area that was growth in the 60s. So now, instead of them looking at a solar farm, they're looking at the back of Amazon. Those are nice starter homes for people, and now that's the character that they're looking at.
Right.
That's disheartening.
Well, and that therein lies the question. On one hand, I 100% agree with what you're saying. On the other hand, next to it is an industrial park, and the rest of that road is an
And
industrial
531
park.
is there too.
So you can look
I
at,
get the potential of that corner, I get the resale value of that corner, I get all of that. But those parcels too had to be rezoned to put that in, so when does that stop? Are you just gonna rezone because of value?
well, and I will say that every town that is now completely developed started this way. They started with an epicenter, and it kept growing, it kept growing, it kept growing, and then we said we're gonna stop at this street, and then we're like, well, let's keep going.
So
So,
if you're gonna rank rural higher, you have to stop doing.
and that is, I think, where I'm trying to get. I'm trying to, in trying to get us to a point where we're saying, and I don't know how to do this. Oh, you were in the email that I wrote today. Is there a percentage? Is there a parcel count? Is there a section? And once that's full, that's it. We're not allowing this anymore. And I don't know that we can all answer it, but we can all give directions and say, here's what we want to know. And then the board can be tasked with funding some type of study.
One of the things, I mean, that's further down the line, number, blah, blah, blah. Probably think that we should do one of the, things that we call strategy. It seems to me, I don't know that much about all this, but it seems like one of the challenges in terms of planning is people who are farming and maybe the next generation, if it's a family farm, doesn't want to continue, will sell their property, which makes total sense. And that's something that, as much as we talk about planning and wanting to maintain certain things, that's something that we don't really have.
I agree. I don't want to say it either, but if I had 100 acre, whatever, stuck in your hand, I dealt with that. These guys got, you got a nice deal. What are you supposed to do? What do you get? If you can't sell it to someone who's going to pay you a lot of money, you're going to sell it. So you're going to have to set a price for who can buy it and who can't. Who else is going to buy it? Another farmer? Well, one farmer doesn't want to buy it. Right. So that's
Because it's gonna be pushed
Yeah,
cost
yeah.
inside. You know it can't be rezoned.
I know, but then you have land, can never be rezoned. You gotta get all the farmers together. And tell them this land can never be worth anything but farm. Are they gonna go for it?
I mean, when
A
you,
lot of them will, some of them won't.
so when they bought the land 50 years ago,
Whatever, exactly. What's they got to do with that? It's 50 years ago.
they bought farmland.
Well, but everyone buys farmland just to part. Someday they always figure this is my retirement. Not every farmer is that successful. Some of them are plenty successful. Some of them might need it or the kids want it. Kids move to New York City or something.
Let me bring it back to, because we're moving on to the very important specific, some of which are not going to be able to be answered. But there can be things added on some of these other areas that we point towards the fact that it has to be dealt with. But let's see if where are we on the policy statement? Just plain and simple. Is there any reason to change anything in this? Or do you like it, even though it's messy when you start to think about the specifics? Should you leave it the same, or is there something you would change?
The only thing that popped out to me with the statement is the first sentence, to add just two words to it, where it says it is the policy of the town to manage development. Would it be beneficial to add in there is the policy of the town to manage future growth and development? Because our vision statement does address future growth. Because you look at a comprehensive plan, you're trying to, this is looking into the future, this is to preserve down the road. So would it be beneficial for us to have to manage for future growth and development, instead of just development? That's all.
What do people think about that?
Makes, assumes you're gonna have growth.
But I think it also makes it so that we're not just, when I hear development, I pretty much just think commercial. I know that that's not accurate, but future growth and development might assist in the meeting.
And that jumped out at me because I look at that vision as our steering wheel, and future growth is addressed in there. And that's where we could kind of align the two.
I think this statement in general, this is just my interpretation, it really does push back quite a bit. I don't want to say against, but against a lot of commercial and industrial development. That's my feeling, is that it does. Although it gives permission to manage it, I feel like it does push back quite a bit on development. Does anybody else feel that way? Do you feel like it's not strong enough as to its intention, or?
I think it's strong enough, but has it been practiced? Because, and I'll say this because I was on the zoning board. I think I can maybe recall just on my one hand, how many times we've turned down an application. How many years were you on the zoning? 7? The zoning board rarely turned down an application. And when we talked about solar arrays, part of that, when we gave the okay for that, when it came to zoning was the very last check mark on the sheet that the state gave the applicants. It started with, town board, planning board, environmental, it went through a battery of things. And the instructions to zoning were, as long as they have met all the prior criteria, zoning really doesn't have any statute or anything to say no. I mean, you may not like the project, you may disagree with the project, but as long as it had met all the criteria up until that point, the only thing zoning could really say was, we want a berm here and some 6-foot tall pine trees to line it and some greenery, around it so it doesn't, can't see it from the road. That's all we could do. So, when we're talking about in the statement here, preserved over time, new residential, commercial, and industrial investment will be considered town character. Again, you have to go and you have to make it known to boards that are in charge. Read this before you make any decisions. Read this, because, like I said, by the time it got to us in zoning, it had already been pretty much pre-decided, like what we were able to do and not do. And that went for any development, not just the solar arrays, but Emerald development that's going on now, the development that's going on Manitou Road by Century Mold down there, the apartments or the good use for that. But I mean, like all of that stuff was, we're looking at this, then it needs to be put into practice as well. And again, it's one of those things where we used to hear it all the time. We love the small town feel, we love the character of the town, okay, but then why are you building a multi-thousand square foot, solar array in the middle of the road or wherever? I mean, it's just stuff that I think the boards have to consider when they're looking at those future developments and read, what the state. Because you're right, it is very pushes back on a lot of that stuff. But if you're coming for a variance for X, Y, and Z, and the zoning board is just, checking it off.
Interesting you bring up the over and near of the Benelux countries, farmland is farmland and will always be farmland. It can't change. That's why cemeteries aren't big over in Europe. This is the cemetery we had in 1150 and it's not getting any bigger. So, and then they've stuck to their guns over there. Industrial sites, industrial.
Well, and I'll say,
States farmland and the houses are all framed together.
we were part of the last comprehensive plan, and part of that plan, that committee actually redrew what they thought would be the future use map. And on that future use map, it includes the area on Shepherd Road for light industrial. It includes the area that used to be the Wegmans property on 259 and 31. And it was farmland that was purchased and is going to be developed commercially. And that's been years in the making. And then it even goes down 531 past the bridge. Yep. Yeah, Heritage Corridor.
Heritage Corridor.
It's got a name and yet it hasn't been developed. So as part of this assignment, we do get the opportunity at some point to look through a future use map and revisit that. And what that will do is it will kind of designate, like, this is where this version of the steering committee feels as though this is an appropriate spot for this, and the rest of it, we're leaving it alone. So this statement, while I know it's only number 2, and we're only supposed to spend 15 minutes on it, it has some implication, and that's why I think it makes sense to spend this much time. Well,
That's the big part.
and I agree, but at the same time, you have multiple bodies that are not necessarily there to tell the other body what to do. That said, there should be maybe vision statements of each of those boards, and part of that should say, be in alignment with the, comprehensive plan.
I hate to jump in, yeah, probably should. The thing I mean, it sounds like everybody lets a statement and add the, between manage and develop future growth. I think there's 2 words in there, and other than that, no one's suggesting changes. One thing I would say, this is brought up, I was looking at it, and I actually could see people, a different set of people interpreting this very differently and doing things that no one in this round table would like to have. So what this policy statement means now has to be demonstrated in the next year's plan contract. So all the things that have been raised as concerns should be, think about, is it being covered in the items that fall next? Now we're looking at policy objectives, and there's, let's see, encourage residential development to be directed to areas where water and sewer are available with future land use. Increase opportunities for future development with single family neighborhood commercial land.
Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean, commercial use of the neighborhood? What does it say, in the neighborhood, what would be commercial? You're gonna get a 7-Eleven in the neighborhood, or?
No, they have a specific thing, and that's an actual zoning, neighborhood commercial.
Really?
It usually allows for like bake shops,
Yeah, it's a small.
coffee, kishi, little mom and pop type stuff that you used to have.
Trying to picture that.
So
the
one place
neighborhood
off the-
we have now.
One place off the top of my head that I know is zoned neighborhood commercial would be on 31, basically adjacent to the new Bob's Pool,
Okay.
because there's neighborhoods right there.
Right.
Bob's Pool, and then that, there's a flooring
Yeah,
thing right there. So then we have an auto sales
Okay.
place, we've got Fresh,
yeah.
and then the whole front of that is all labeled as neighborhood commercial, so they could
Oh,
develop.
in front of those houses that they built there. and the
Yeah,
rushes.
so it would hide those super ugly white fences.
So we're clear on what that's.
Yeah.
Then, let's see, accommodate a variety of living options. And, we're talking, that's that's even changed to saying we want more predominantly single family dwellings, or these are the things that need to be thought about. Preserve existing housing values, ensure there is sufficient housing for seniors that is attractive and convenient, extend village character to neighborhoods in the town where feasible. I'm not sure what that means. Utilize alternative development techniques to minimize land consumption. I don't know what that means either.
Well, the extend village character to neighborhood was a perfect example. Would be like town hall, where that has sort of that feel along the road there that it's a neighborhood feel instead of just having on the other hand Rex Drive, whatever it is off of Whittier, that there's no neighborhood feel. So that was the thought process.
So
We
what,
were reading neighborhood.
so what are people's thoughts about these items? Change them, throw them all out of the room? What would you like to do?
I still have a concern about that variety of living options. I think we have to be careful about too much subsidized housing.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because I don't know. Well,
Not now, but
usually the future when that becomes. an issue.
That's the problem, is I don't know that many come in and they
Come in like
say,
that, I mean,
we are
not
subsidized housing.
Well,
They
they
say,
don't.
we're gonna do apartments, and as they make them bigger and better and more expensive, you know, everybody else goes, well, man, we're gonna have a hard time getting people to live here, so we're gonna have to drop the price, we're gonna have to go subsidized or something like that. So it's really a lagging indicator, is the subsidized housing, so.
Does anybody body approve of that housing? Or just an application? I'm not
It's
aware
part of an
of how that works.
application, yeah, it's part of an application process. Which you kind of really can't deny, so we.
No,
We
I'm
don't see it
I'm
here.
just curious.
Yeah.
That's a good point, though, so the town board doesn't vote on it.
Well, just how it goes from regular to subsidizing. I didn't know the course of how that happened.
It's coming. There's no doubt it's coming. As I said before, we got the right on Lyle Road, across from us, got two section 8 living, 2 skier apartments. And we got townhomes behind us, which are nice townhomes, but, you know, we still have that section 8 living there. And, you know, for the most part, you know, I see different, yeah, I've seen a lot of it. Just the development, as you said, I grew up at our store. And I used to look across the field, you see Lowell water tower. You know, now it's just all industrial and I think on the industrial end, the issue you gotta worry about is the fact that you guys keep it all in one area. So in Gates, the Gates is really exploring Kodak had a department. So then you go over in Gates Center by Westmont over there, and it's all that industrial area. You know, it's hard to figure out how much industrial area is there. Subsidized housing, really well.
One of the, given what everybody's saying, one of the things that I just thought about, this is holiday variety, what if it was changed to prioritize the variety of living out?
I would love that. I like that because it actually informs the board, and if you're prioritizing it, hopefully you're doing that using a set of metrics.
There's a big difference between prioritizing and accommodating. Could be perceived as anybody coming in, we're gonna try to accommodate, fill your needs. Whereas prioritize, there's a little more structure or substance to it, where there could be limitations.
And it links directly to a lot of the original stuff about the character. That would be my suggestion on that.
Yeah, I accommodate my in-laws, I don't know if that works.
We'll make the note of that.
You're on tape.
That's right.
Yeah, well, because, watching this, it just. Going further.
Okay, let's look at these one at a time. First, residential development, the directed to areas of water service. Is there anything that you would want to do with that, or I'm stuck between, are we just revising what was already said, or do you want to really do something new with that things that?
This is more of a question, not an addition to that. So the whole statement about development to be directed to areas where water and sewer are available. Is drainage ever a concern during the development process? And if it is or isn't, is it necessary to be in this plan? I'm sure it's in other areas where drainage is addressed. I just know that if anybody has any information, that's sort of more of a question than, I don't know if it needs to be put in here, but
Yeah, it's always addressed to get thanked for. But I don't know if it's necessarily something we would put in here.
Right.
It's required.
Yeah.
Right.
And they would deny the application if there wasn't enough space for, a percentage to be considered for drainage. But I would say that what's interesting about this is that the way I'm reading it, encourage residential development directed to areas where water and sewer are available. So goes to Mr. Miska, who has a good plot of land for single family homes, but there isn't water available unless he wants to pay a significant fee for sewer.
There's water, sewer.
Right.
Can I ask a question? Does anybody, like, anybody's suggestion this should be dumped or, because what I'm the encourage residential, whatever water and sewer are available. When you get down to policy measures, that's not really talked about.
Does the town have any plans to extend?
We don't have plans to pay to extend sewers. I don't know that that means that we're not going to allow for developers to extend it. But I mean, we've looked at it and we've assisted in certain areas with studies, but I don't know that the town has any plans to pay to extend sewers.
My own thought would be, when we get to the next thing, we have something that addresses that, and what the wording would be, that it's not in the next one. The ones are under policy measures should match up to some degree to all the ones.
One of the policies that we have to discuss is last time, that when development comes in, it can attach the sewers, it does, and it has to bring them to the other side of the development. Right? So that in theory, you can daisy chain them throughout the town.
And Amazon did do that.
But if that's something we want to look at, we're trying to restrict it all. Is that a policy that we can off of? Which is how.
And they did actually ask that recently, is that we've done all this. I mean, you guys have plans to use it. Right?
I'm going to try and bring us back.
Use that, no?
But they're paying for it now. Yeah, they're actually paying us.
We got to come back to the so we're still on one part, the third, blah, blah, blah.
Should be reworded to be something like where, the infrastructure is conducive to building.
I don't know. Because there's a problem, there's a couple houses, areas in the town that were built, and I've actually said right at me, we should not be building a house here. Staying water, so there's no, get back to the drainage issue, but.
I mean, as far, it goes back to the same thing with like the Rod Steiner thing. Someone has 5 acres, that their grandma gives them, and they gotta put, they wanna put a house there. They say no, because they don't have sewers. I don't know. I don't know. Is that fair? Is that right? I don't know.
It says or future land use.
I want to jump in again.
Yeah,
See if we can focus on the wording, because encourage is one word. Do you want to say encourage? Yes.
Yes.
Or do you want to, is that really?
It's true.
Well, if you encourage it, that's limiting where you can build a town. There is none.
We're talking residential homes, right?
Few sewers on the west side.
What if it said ensure that residential development is directed to areas? That's a stronger statement.
More control.
I mean, I'm trying to read this sense of where people are at with regard to the town. And I'm seeing, some desire to grow, but really some protection, because it sounds like some things are growing in ways and developing in ways that probably people would think, "Geez, that's not what
I like, sure, and I like, there's kind of about infrastructure, because we think of infrastructure as water, sewer. In the future, there will be other infrastructure, and I mentioned before, internet, comes down to it, so infrastructure covers whatever's currently thought of as infrastructure. Instead of being specific.
So where would you think that, how would you word that?
I would say, ensure residential development is directed to areas where infrastructure is available. Not to say
It's consistent with future land use law.
Somebody writing it down?
Or just replacing water and sewer with infrastructure. Okay.
I like that because of, there are other things. You mentioned some of the things, gives some flexibility. And if you use the word ensure, you're also suggesting a little encourages conflict. So, come on.
So now what does that do to you?
Nothing, because, and we had this, I'm assuming it was all set to go for whatever, so it really doesn't bother me, but I'm sure, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure there's gonna be options, or every project you can look at it visually, so. I mean, I guess it would discourage someone from, oh, we're gonna do this, and then, oh, it's crazy, I'm not gonna do it, but for small things, like I was talking, I mean, a little family, someone wants to build a house for themselves and their kids or something, you know, in a neighborhood. I mean, that's gotta be looked at individually. Sometimes people like to live on well water, and, you know, the whole propane gas. A lot of people like that, so
You don't
can't
need
do
to,
that
right?
right?
What's wrong with something?
Or something, that's right.
So maybe infrastructure helps replace the sewer complex. Appropriate is subjective, don't you think?
Some people don't want to. Don't want it. Yeah. Some people don't. Every time Rockport tries to put it in, they have a hard time. People don't want to pay for it. Yeah.
Okay, let's put the, we have our lines. Sure,
Yeah.
residential development directed to areas where
And don't
infrastructure
fit.
are available for consistent or future land use.
Or appropriate infrastructure. I put both.
Appropriate infrastructure.
I put both.
Let's go on to the next. Increase opportunities for increased residential development for single family neighborhood commercial use. Is that the definition of single family neighborhood commercial use? Is there anything different? Throw it out, change the wording.
Have you ever had anything like that in town?
I don't think so, but I believe the intent was to try to get away from more commercial or light industrial and to come back to more of this neighborhood commercial mixed use type thing. I mean, the village has a good amount of it where, you know, the bottom is retail and the top is apartments. I don't know that we're necessarily meaning that, but that's just an example of what a mixed use would potentially
And
be.
it only fit in certain areas.
It would.
Rockport, Spencerport Road, and then the Union Street corridor.
Right.
Yeah.
So are we happy with this way it's written? I mean, I'm noticing that 10 years ago, words you are encourage, increase, accommodate, those all suggest, let's do everything. Are you wanting to leave? Right, which is
Well,
fine.
this didn't happen. This is
Yeah,
the
but-
one thing
yeah.
that is pretty easy to identify that didn't happen. I don't know that that's happened. It's just-
But do you want to leave it, the wording the way it is, or change it, or?
It gives you room to look at it. We want.
Okay, increase opportunities is fine. Anybody disagree with that, or? want to do this? Okay, let's go with that one, go on to the next one. Accommodate variety within options.
So we change that to prioritize.
Prioritize variety. Anybody disagree with that, or? I don't know how that is. Preserve existing housing. How do you do
They're not going down. I'll tell you that. Was the intention to make them not come down or to try?
Well, the intention was like to have the buildings so that if somebody already had an existing house, to follow the code there. I really wouldn't be happy if a patio home went across the street. It was like, I think that was the intent to keep, the zoning character, and that gets into the neighborhood character.
Tiny houses. May have been kind of one of those where we don't want to develop a tiny homes right next.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know how to look at that. We write this thing.
So other thoughts about this
based on what that statement says. Do you feel, or does anybody feel that that needs to be?
I think it was just a response from the committee, there were enough people, that was something that came in, I think we talked to like outside residents at the time too, and that was something that was considered.
Because things are a lot different now.
Oh, yeah.
To one point, they're not coming down. Yeah, they're not coming down. So things are a lot different now, so. I kind of look at that one.
That would
we need
probably
If we
lost.
do, what's its purpose? What are we looking for just to do in regards to future growth or development?
And that's, it gets back to also always said to keep things consistent with the character of the town, and so
Yeah, there's.
preserve existing values. Semantics to me.
Preserve existing character.
Does that need to be in there? Sorry.
I think that we can probably take that
Yeah,
out.
we probably want that.
Let's move on to E.
So that one, I wrote down in my notes as I was reading through this, and again, this, I guess I need to know what attractive is, because what I think is attractive may not be attractive to the person on both sides of me. So, little history about the attractive, when this was written.
Oh, that one I could give you. Remember McDonald's when they painted it purple?
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
okay,
that was one of the items that was brought up that, you can, building a house in a development as long isn't outlandish, but you
Okay.
see contemporary houses next.
Well, there's one on
that's
July.
fine.
They want to go on that $700,000 house.
Yeah,
Because when I-
California.
because when I look at
So
that
they-
statement, I'm sure there's.
No, no, no.
Go ahead.
it's a building.
Just when I look at that statement, it says ensure there is sufficient housing for seniors that is attractive and convenient. To me, because it's senior housing, is attractive need maintained. That's how I took it, is it being maintained? Because sometimes with senior housing, you know, look at a place like Hickory Hollow, you know, they have companies come in and maintain.
I think the
Is that considered
attractive,
attractive?
great take on that. I believe when we said that attractive is meaning the seniors want to come here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we should probably change that. We both read it, be the same thing and get two interpretations.
When I see that word attractive, different values. You know, people deem as attractive.
But do you want to be known as a senior community in Akron?
What's that?
You don't want to be known as a senior community in Akron.
Well, I mean,
You got families here.
one of the things that strikes me is this is the only place that's focuses on a particular population. And is that okay? Because what it's basically saying is this is a prioritized population in our planning for the future.
But 10 years ago, we probably didn't have as many senior housing.
We had a lot of
Opportunities as we do
applications.
now, right? So that was a hot item 10 years ago.
Now we're starting to see rezonings from senior to multi.
So let me ask a sensitive question. Does this end in? Is there any reason for this to be in here, given where things are at? It'll come.
Well,
I don't
this
know,
gets,
I don't know if the town be doing.
this gets back to something we had that, code thing a couple of years ago. I was like, oh, the code, they didn't want to build a senior community center and so the town say, no, you said you're going to do this. So that's sort of what comes into play with this statement. that we're trying to say that right, and we're gonna ensure that there.
So I'm gonna ask the question again, does that need to be here? Because this is really, you know, making this a priority. If it's out, seniors can still come.
Right.
But is that,
12 years ago was the highest.
so what if we can take it out or take it out?
We've already changed one senior community so that they didn't have to build that community center for now.
Have they built all they can?
But they posted the money.
They got it back.
I wouldn't give it back. They said they were gonna build it.
Let's remember, we're way behind. We're not done today.
I'll tell you why.
Next one is extend village care to the neighborhoods in the town where feasible. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I think we.
This one doesn't.
Sounds to me like it sounds to me like we're trying to say.
Let's try and keep one conversation at a time. Let's just try and keep the focus on this and not have several conversations.
It just sounds to me like they're saying that the character of the village, the neighborhoods in the village, they'd like that emulated other places in town. Not that it has to connect to the village, but that when there's a new housing development that comes up, that we should be modeling.
And doing the neighborhood commercial is sort of how the village is, as you said, retail downstairs and housing upstairs. And there is the concept, this is the Heritage Corridor, here on Union Street. So when you come in on Union Street, you can see something like the village. But maybe that would get into the development as a, rather than big box stores. So, well, let's make it closer to the village somehow. And whether that's retail apartments or such a zone, something. And yeah, and I think that Heritage Corridor is from Union Street to here.
Yeah, I have a future use map that I can pass around to people if you want. It's just not color coded.
Do we want to go into that now or?
You can, I just want to pass it around to everybody that has it. My guess is we're gonna have to extend it to another session.
Yeah. This is.
But this is a really important one, so.
Then village care to the neighborhood in town where feasible. I mean, that, if you, it needs to be reworked into a sentence that is clear for one. And then it's kind of, the impetus is kind of take away with the term feasible. And like we want to do this.
And how are we gonna do it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not,
We have some limitations in the zoning ordinance currently, and the building department brought up, they would like to run this use in town. Try to accommodate, so for example, we have Jenny Ray Brown going on Homesteads for Hope, she's converting that brick house into residence for people that have disabilities. She's not allowed to do that if she doesn't have any type of mixed use allowance for that. So we're looking at that right now, because where she's zoned, she could have a house, but she couldn't have a facility. So those types of things might be coming as your population ages or as younger kids of the middle class want to stay in the village and they get Taco Bell and they get a grocer and they get something, maybe they'll want to go right off 5:30, want to go home, you know, who knows? I'm just saying it would be a good spot to review, but I don't think the wording, I think the verbiage needs to be either updated or just keep in mind, because it would be very hard to enforce somebody coming into a planning board scenario to say, oh, well, we want you to look like, you know, 150, or whatever. You know what I mean? So.
does anyone feel strongly that this should stay in as written?
I personally don't. I think it would be something to address through other than can't. I don't think it needs to be part of it.
Let's go back to village character, that's also sidewalk.
Yeah.
Those kind of, well, sewers, but, I mean, if you take that, going back to even infrastructure, you know, there's, no, it's not gonna look like Maplewood Avenue,
No, for sure. Never.
anywhere else, but there's other things that villages or cities are known for that people like.
The next one, I also don't understand, utilize alternative development techniques to minimize land consumption. Can someone explain that?
That one thing that's going on at the time, we've had a lot of more conservation easements. And the perfect example is out behind Robert Westside Drive, Union Street. Look out at that, something broke. Alderbrook, they grouped the houses closer together and the conservation for the land behind them to get more green space. That's what that,
So shrink lot size.
shrink lot sizes, instead of, everybody having a 5 acre lot, Pittsburgh, so.
But the problem I have with that is that, in my opinion, that all it does is it provides the opportunity for developers to build more houses on a small parcel.
Conservation, you had the whole parcel, and, when they did that Alder book, they worked that out, that the houses would be real closer together, and then that land behind there, once it's put into conservation, it's lower taxes, and it's, can never be developed. To get that changed in the state, that's a state thing. They're pretty adamant about it, and that worked out well, everybody, nice development over in Pittsburgh where they did it, they built up, they're bigger than that mansions, but they have communal property behind them, there's, hiking trails that they use conservation for.
Who like, did we pay or is it just right away?
It's, the Roberts Wesleyan one is, I believe it's like a Forever Wild. One over in, Pittsburgh, the HOA takes care of it for that development.
Do we need an item that says this?
I don't know, but that's what, I'm just giving you where that came from.
I mean, that's an important point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, they're certain, you get a certain number of houses, I think, for like 40 acres, you get 40 houses. So you can take them small lots or big or something like that, and the rest, you only get 40, no matter, you know what I'm saying? So you have a set number, I think, per acre. I think it's 1 acre. I'm not.
It's like a minimum, so a minimum right established.
Yeah, max number of houses.
So does that,
I think it's implied, it's already want to have smaller lots.
The boards look at that, how they fit in the lot, in the confines of the lot. So that is reviewed by.
okay, so we can take that one.
Yeah, it's redundant.
Yeah, that,
Jackie,
we're big on the fact that
I want to hear some.
Rodents, but my HOAs are registered with the state, there's something that are kind of hands off. But Forever Wilds and conservation easements, you run into issues with
different things.
those.
Forever Wild, there is no legal protection of that land. That means it's Forever Wild until the guy decides to develop. That's the people of airport, however.
Well, we've had issues.
And conservation is a legal thing. That can't be. Toys, you can't even build a road.
Maintain.
It could be, I don't know how. Built land and conservation. They paid a lower tax rate on it. And it's like, there's no maintenance, it's like woods, fields, it's, and you've got limited use, you can't log it, you can't, build a pond back there.
So what were you gonna do?
They're just sensitive areas, because then all of a sudden they can get on.
Yeah,
where
the
they-
Forever Wild.
Something happens.
Yeah, the building.
This,
Please have one conversation at a time, please.
Can we give you a local example of how we call Clifton Ridge? When it was built, was Forever Wild, on the south side, and we have permission to build patio homes. And unbeknownst to everybody, except some people, the expressway came through. And the Forever Wild was not. I remember going to the meetings. When we knew it was coming, executive one, I was looking on development. Forever Wild is not. So doesn't need to be stated about how land is. That's what this is really about. And I'm hearing, let's take it out.
Well, should we, say,
Really ambiguous, but I understand the intent better now.
the intent,
I just don't know how to change that.
it was to look at the lots and make sure that they're being used the best for the builder and the town.
Okay, let's say that again.
Oh boy. The intent was to utilize, the lots, the land that would be best for the town in the builder. Compromise, builder wants to put in the 40 houses and say, well, you know, if you drop it to 35, it looks better, we got a little green there.
How about, assure the development of land is best for the town?
What about regulate?
Regulate,
Who's opposed to zoning board?
I would, that's
Yeah.
fine, just regulate the development of land so that it is best for the town and building.
I just put a question mark on it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me,
Put that down, it's regular.
Right.
Yeah.
but that's an item that can be rewritten.
Yeah, let's put it down now, and that will.
So what we have is really 4 items. Ensure residential development is directed to areas where infrastructure are available or consistent with future land use map. Increase opportunities for mixed-use residential development, including single-family, neighborhood, commercial use. Accommodate a variety of living.
Prioritize.
Prioritize areas of- and some version of assure, regulate, the development of land is best for town and building. So if we start looking at policy measures, the policy measures should match these 4 things.
You know, Dave, real quick, before we go to the medical, so we've been going to Dave, asking them, you know, why is this in here, why is that there? And, he would say, going on at that time, when this plan was written, this was what was happening. If we're taking 3 items out, are there any new or current trends that we need to address that need to be put in this plan? Or are those put in other plans that might go to the plan?
No, I think this is a good point.
So when you take all these 3 items, we almost eliminated 50%. Is there any items that need to be added because we have current trends that are happening now that we need to consider moving forward?
So
I don't know the answer to that question. I guess I'm leaning towards some of the experts.
so the question is, are there measurable activities that would address the policy statement that should be included in additional?
What about recreation or things like we spoke about, like Friend Park? Community use areas, things of that nature.
There is a section on recreation and leisure in the,
Oh, another area of language.
This is part of our policy statement, right? We're trying to find activities that will meet up the policies that we just went through the last hour. So it's one of our policy statements, something to do with community, with diverse leisure and cultural assets and quality community. So it's something we can both get to, you know, accomplish that as an activity, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we need to put that in the parking lot. Because- And move on to those measures. I'm just thinking that's probably gonna be a whole nother discussion, thinking about what are some current hot trends that we should address in here when we think about the future.
well, I don't know that each section has to cross-reference each other as well. Although.
My own thought is that we're gonna have a ton of work and the time to be able to come back with things that may be limited. So there are things that would be good to add here, but probably be worthwhile to do while we're working on residential.
Well, how about the word encourage? So we go back to encourage some type of community development areas. Outside. Yeah.
Community development,
Community development activities, really, right? Use like parks and maybe, as Mike said, maybe expand on the soccer field something, encourage that.
But isn't it a responsibility of the schools that they doing?
Oh, it's not, it was leaving like kickball. I don't know anybody plays kickball, but I got like the biggest money maker right now. You can run out there, down to Valley Park, all the teams pay hundreds of dollars. And what are they doing? They're not harmonizing, it's freaking kickball. I mean, doing this, draw lines anywhere.
These are all lots of there.
But it's just crazy. I mean, but it's money for them. That's why I don't care what they do. Yeah, but I'm just suggesting there are other.
I would consider adding something about, community leisure. But that might end up being a cross reference. Okay.
Anything else that should be included, the measurable activity accomplished, to be accomplished to meet stated goals? Have we addressed, the theme of preservation is pretty strong in that policy. Maintain and preserve a big part of the policy. Is that reflected in the language?
Can you repeat that question?
The whole kind of theme of the approach to preserving cross generations, that kind of stuff. Is there any objective that addresses that? And if not, would it be worthwhile, since that seems to be a stronger push this decades after one. Should there be a statement? How about that? Should. Forward. I mean, you could really say something. Not gonna work, but all development should include addressing, the importance of maintaining the town's character and role.
I wonder if that's not what F was trying to. I didn't put a line through it first.
Just trying to word that.
I just wrote the word, I just wrote rework.
Yeah, I think we ended up with ensure the development of land is best for town building. Yeah, maybe with you saying reword, something there should be a word having to do with the town's historic character, how they want to put it. It seems like something that addresses the issue of who we are and how we want to.
There was, I feel that we should try to maintain neighborhoods, town pump, I keep bringing it up because that's such a nice. It's not a straight line, if you look at the old plan, which one of the things you want, things you don't want, one of them was, they showed a row of houses, where the garages or driveways 25 feet long, and garage is right there, and that's all you see is the auto, the auto. I think the character extended village, character would be good.
Maintain village character in neighborhoods and town ordinance.
Encourage. Yeah, we're feasible, and like town pump comes up Northampton Estates, sort of like that, not quite maintained. Put fence in the whole.
Someone plays the word extend and encourage.
How about, what happened to the word assure?
We did her. We did.
Are we gonna address some of this when we move on to policy number 4?
Well, that's policy measures. The measures are the things that are gonna, be the next level down specificity of the policy.
Like how do we? How do we?
Right, so we have to have the objective first before we can have a way to measure whether we do it.
That's true. Because, I mean, how much land is there left to develop in the village? Right, so if we adopted that as the policy for the town, I think we probably have a lot of farmers.
Right.
So I think we have to be careful with comparisons, but I mean, we're sort of spot checking this one and saying that we want our neighborhoods to reflect village character.
Once
No.
Really
once you're
want
able
your
to get that,
neighborhoods to reflect rural character, if that's what you want.
I
And
think that's
And
what we're,
village is not a proper noun, it's the general term of a village or a city in comparison, rural, great.
yeah.
So
Okay.
if you're gonna live in a rural area, you're not going to have
We don't want to run it down.
business.
Right.
You're gonna drive to the.
Right. But it says specific to neighborhoods. I mean, it's kind of just cherry picking on the neighborhood part.
We even have rural neighborhoods,
what about the shore,
concentration.
the, town neighborhood reflect, rural,
Rural character.
rural character?
That means bigger lots,
That doesn't have anything to do with
or
that.
less density,
Mhm.
right? Those are rural neighborhoods.
Well, see, you're asking one person, and I feel like this is worthy of a survey. It's worthy of
No,
consensus.
we're the ones.
That's what I
If
mean.
we use it
So-
without-
Yeah, yep.
To
That's an
develop
important
a
distinction.
town, and rural is one of the things, you gotta pick where you want to be.
Well, it gets back to, there's gonna be growth, like or not, and back 20, 30 years ago, they were pushing the 5 acre lots for everything. That didn't work out too well. So when I look at F, I think it's building the development, or whether it's development of multiple, let's say 10, 20 homes, to make it more like a hamlet or a village atmosphere, so that people want to get out and interact with their neighbors, rather than just either neighbor's garages across the street. That's what I think. Make them welcome.
And maybe you should take out rural character and use small town charm.
Yeah. Do that.
Short town
The,
neighborhoods reflect.
We got one right off of Henry, you got Countryside, which is more neighborhood, and then the new one across the street.
In the town, we have a lot of different versions.
Yeah, I mean, and right across the street, it's entirely different feel.
We have some with, like you said, driveways that go way back. We have like ones that are kind of into that, like Ashland Oaks.
Yeah.
And then you've got neighborhoods like mine that are not like that. And then even behind us, those Ryan homes are even tighter. So, I mean, you've got to mix it. I don't know that any of that's bad or wrong.
Your drive was butter too,
That is true.
but when you start moving
Further out.
that next neighborhood out, the
Yeah.
next one after that, now it's more small town, not rural.
We're down to 429.
One minute.
What about a short town neighborhood for four small town? That'll work.
Could you repeat that in terms?
Sure, town neighborhood reflect small town.
We're having insurance like.
Sure.
We can thank you or an issue or an intention.
Neighborhoods will reflect small town.
Okay.
Neighborhoods will reflect small town.
I think it's worth our while to start with 4 and 5 and maybe bump out the other. And what I'll do is I'll actually find a way to get color coded versions of these so you can actually see where the previous board and the previous group kind of assigned where we want residential to go. And we'll go back to this a number of times, so I think it's perfect having this concept for the future. And I think I'm gonna pass this out, please hold on to this for next meeting. But it does, this is what I was referencing when I was saying that it shows lots, by single family homes, apartments, and things of that nature, so I'll just pass it around. Please hold on to this for the next time.
And I think, Kristen, you'll be able to have these items kind of written up, so.
Yeah, definitely.
We can look at it. I won't be here in November, and Mike will be steering the ship. And then after that, we won't meet again until.
I think it's a big one, I think it's worth it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think we're gonna find it. Thanks for wanting to know.
Yeah, thank you.